consistently collected. Traditional methods of collection are often inconsistent. There's statistical problems. The survey only went to one group of people, not the others. It wasn't representative of the sample. Oh, I had a problem with the bus. I couldn't get community, so they weren't included this time. People didn't fill out my survey when I asked them to. People made mistakes on their survey. Sometimes data isn't consistent, whereas other data is highly consistent. If you put a thermometer in the room and I keep looking in that thermometer, right, hopefully, if it's been measured and zeroed, it will provide exactly comparable measurements of the temperature day in, day out. That is consistent data collection. It's a robot collecting data. Right? It doesn't face all these other issues. So that's a big issue, and I think it's actually a big determinant of whether it's quality data or not. Then I've identified in orange some big ones for today because it's about personal data. Dimensionality. That's a kind of a theory word for saying how much do I know about each individual observation. So if I've got a record, how many columns are in the record? Right? I'll talk about that in a moment. Do I know the person's name, first and last and middle? Do I know the phone number? Do I know the email address? Do I know the height, the weight? Do I know their social security or identity number? Do I know the Medicare number? How many of these extra additional things are tied to this individual record? That's how many dimensions I've got. But I'm going to show you later, low dimensional data can be really useful. Is it being passively collected? Most of the big, really useful data these days are passively collected. What I mean is that the user, the subject, right, of that data collection does not know it's being collected. It's collected for other reasons. It's collected for technical reasons in the company. I need to know how many mobile phone users are at a cell tower at a time. I happen to also know the phone numbers and the metadata about the phone connections and who received and who didn't. But that's at the moment not so interesting. I need to have some load balancing at the cell tower, but I'm collecting all this data in a passive way. Okay, when you go and touch on and touch off in your Mikey, you don't realise it, you don't know about it, but data is being collected, okay, for often reasons. But it's passively collected, you're not explicitly part of some examination. Is it identifiable? There's two types, direct because it's got like my personal phone number in it, or indirect because even though it might be hashed or de-anonymised, there's a way that I can actually map back to me through some sort of hashing or triangulation. And is it comprehensive? So can I get access to everyone in this community or population? Is it like a census? Or is it a sample? I only have like some fraction of the community that are being measured. There's lots of other dimensions to think about when we think about data. But there's some characteristics. Quickly, what is big data? Some people think it means a lot of files. Some people think it means it's got to be digital. I actually prefer Oxford scholar Victor Meyer Schoenberger. Consider this situation. A scientist goes to Antarctica and they're interested in taking photographs of the penguin on the left. That is classical data science. They set up a camera. It is going to take specific photos when they see that penguin in the view, and that's going to be the specific research grant tied to that penguin, and that is the way that they collect the data. A specific research question, specific data collection activity, and a specific kind of hypothesis to test. But this penguin has walked into the field, and suddenly some biologist says, hang on a minute, that beak looks really interesting. In fact, I've never seen a beak like it. It could be a completely new species. Now, if this is a classical data collection problem, they cannot do anything about it because the new penguin is out of focus and wasn't the subject of my inquiry. Big data is not like that. Big data actually would take all of the information about this at any one time so that I could go back and ask many, many different research questions, things that I didn't even know existed at the time. But I'm just going to collect lots of data that allows me to go back and ask different research questions. In fact, this camera photo was taken with a big data camera called a literate. You can, after the fact, go back and get anything in the field of view in focus. And so suddenly I can identify this penguin and I can make a decision about whether I want to do more with it. So for me, big data is passively collected, it's consistently collected, and it's comprehensive. That is, you basically know all of the elements, you've collected everything with your instrument rather than just one specific thing for a research purpose. And that allows you to go back and ask many research questions of it. And the reason why there's so much data now being generated that is interesting, there's a lot of oil in the hills, is because there's so many devices collecting passive information at the moment. And all these organisations are suddenly swimming, literally, in kind of the data oil of all the passive data they have, thinking, geez, there must be some value in this. Right? So that's the world we're kind of living in, this exponential increase in passive data collection. I might finish here. Alternative data, my definition, big data, if big data is passive, consistent and comprehensive, then alternative data is just passive and consistent. That is, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got a photograph of every airport on the world, but you've got a precise set of photographs, daytime satellite imagery and analysis of one airport. It's consistently collected. I can run the satellite over every single day, right? It's passively collected. The airport people don't know it's happening, but it's not comprehensive, right? And so you'll find now there's alternative data platforms, providers and so on, and there are those who also have big data, which is they've got an instrument that goes global. They don't do sampling, that whole statistical thing where you like sample to population and the biases, it's not a problem for them. They have census data. They know everything about every square kilometre of the planet Earth. They can tell you what's there. They're not doing sampling, right? So it's actually a new statistics, right? It's not statistics. Statistics is basically wrestling with the problem that you don't have complete observation powers over the universe, right? Census, you have a sample. This is not the world you're in. Typically, you actually have everything. All right, I'll stop there. And if you want to ask me later about the work of the IP Observatory, we can talk about that. The ice cream.
Thank you. I don't have any slides. I'll just give a few comments about the Productivity Commission's work. So I'm the Executive Manager at the Productivity Commission, and this week we became a gold sponsor of ESSA, so we are very supportive of this society, and we hope to be an employer of choice for economics graduates from Monash and other universities. I do have ulterior motives for being here. I'm here to demonstrate the interesting work we do at the Productivity Commission. At the PC, we've done research into digital disruption and growing the digital economy across the Tasman, and the government asked us to do an inquiry into data availability and use, which we completed in 2017. So today I'm just going to give you a high-level summary of the approach we took in that inquiry. We proposed a very sort of ambitious, broad-reaching framework for public and private sector data. And in a bit of a contrast to Simon's oil analogy, I'm going to say that data is a 21st century great new renewable resource, unlike oil. Put simply, the goal of policy is to set the foundations for beneficial use and exchange of data, to lower barriers to the use and exchange of data, and not create new barriers, while also protecting against certain harms and market failures. In the same way that the goal of good economic policy has always been, for example, to reduce barriers to the trading goods and services, to the movement of labour and capital. So how do you make an effective market for personal data? As a first step, we need to create a comprehensive right for Australian consumers to obtain and use their own digital data. At this point, I would like to emphasise the word right. We are not saying that consumers own their data, which is the approach they took in Europe with their GDPR. I don't believe data can have one clear owner. It's created as part of a transaction. It can be copied infinitely without losing fidelity, and it's really hard to permanently erase. So what we're saying is you have a right to your data, like your banking data, but your bank also has a right to that data. And maybe that penguin doesn't have data, but individuals should have data to about themselves. When individuals have rights to their data, they can transfer it to a third party. This can spur competition and lower barriers to entry to innovators. For example, we think greater data transferability can help people get better deals on their electricity or on their loans, for example, through open banking. And I think when consumers better understand how data is collected and used, maybe they'll be more willing to share it. And digital platforms like Google and Facebook, they have huge monopoly power, market power, and they get their strength from data they hold, which poses a big barrier to new entrants. And we think creating access rights to that data is good for competition in the long run. A second key plank of our inquiry was how to have more data sharing and release of public sector data. We took a risk-based approach, so we proposed having trusted users, accredited release authorities, and a national data custodian. Why did we take a special focus with public sector data? There are a few reasons. First, while most of your interactions with Google and Facebook are voluntary, with governments often your interactions are not voluntary. Second, there are many benefits to public sector data. For research purposes, just to improve government service delivery, to policy evaluation, and for accountability. And finally, governments are notoriously risk averse, and Australia is way behind other countries in releasing valuable public sector data. So that was our ambition with the data inquiry, and Tara will talk a little bit about what the ACCC is doing to implement that. So I would like to finish my few minutes with a more somber note and perhaps a more provocative note that we can maybe discuss later. Good economic policy balances costs and benefits. It creates new opportunities while also trying to minimise potential harms or market failures. Unfortunately, in the personal data space, I'm seeing somewhat excessively risk-averse approach, for example, in data localisation laws, but the most pressing issue, I think, is privacy. I feel that we economists are losing the privacy debate. You have overly blunt and restrictive privacy settings that are limiting innovation and beneficial data sharing and matching. These restrictions impose a disproportionately large cost on individuals and small firms. The big companies, they can handle that stuff. And privacy actually allows unscrupulous actors to hide under anonymity. Quite often these privacy positions are not legislated, rather they are just positions taken by risk-averse individuals, and actually the privacy legislation does allow data sharing, data matching, just people don't take it up. So I think that's unfortunate. I think the aim of privacy regulation should be to build trust in data sharing and data use. This obviously requires governments to better communicate the beneficial case for data sharing use and just to build trust in their custodianship of data. So to end, I'd just like to point out that economics offers a very valuable toolkit for understanding the growth of data as an asset and dealing with issues like property rights, market power, competition and innovation. And I hope it piques your research interests so you can help us answer tricky questions like, what is the price of privacy? Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. My name's McCallum and I'm here from the ACCC in the Consumer Data Right branch. And I just wanted to pick up on what Mary said and reiterate that the ACCC is also a place with a great graduate scheme for economists and lots of fascinating and interesting work going on at the moment. I'm here today to talk about the CDR work, which builds on from the recommendations that the Productivity Commission made in the Data Availability and Use Inquiry report. And it's really about implementing a new remedy that's aimed at trying to unlock some of the value in personal data for consumers themselves, and these are our Australian consumers. I also just wanted to say that there are a variety of views within the ACCC about some of the issues involved in personal data, so just a sort of health warning that what I say today may be treated as my opinion, not a sort of agency view. A lot of this we're still working through. So we take as a starting point, there's definitely economic value in personal data, and I'll just note here as well that I'm slightly nervous today. My background is as a lawyer who sort of moved into the regulatory space. I'm not an economist, so don't hold that against me on this. There is economic value in digitally collected data. Businesses are extracting a lot of value from it. The people that aren't seeing much benefit at the moment are consumers themselves. And it's a fact that probably we're all aware of. There's a lot of Australian consumer markets that are deeply confusing and complex and hard to unravel whether you're getting a good deal within them. If you've tried to work out what's a good energy policy to buy or a good mobile phone plan or what superannuation fund you should be in, these are all difficult decisions. I think a lot of consumers are finding it hard to make any meaningful choice. So I'll give you a bit of a brief overview now of the consumer data right as we're implementing it, and then a bit of a worked example of a consumer, and I'm going to call her Jenny, and sort of demonstrate how Jenny may get some value from her personal data by this remedy. So a little bit of scene setting. The CDR, the Consumer Data Right, is a federal government initiative, and it's a data portability right. So it will give consumers a legal right to require that certain nominated businesses that hold their data share this with trusted third parties in a standardized digital format. And the standardized format is pretty important here. Another really crucial element of this is that the sharing is only ever going to happen if the consumer wants it to. The consumer's going to have to see some value proposition here to go into this. It's also worth noting here that for the CDR, consumers are individuals, but also small businesses. CDR is eventually, hopefully, going to be economy-wide, but it's being rolled out sector by sector basis. And the first sector it's being rolled out in is the banking sector, where it's also known as open banking. The ACCC is the lead regulator of the CDR, but we're also working with other government policies as we implement this and developing this data sharing framework. Probably the two sort of key relationships here are with the OAIC, the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner, who we're working with to make sure the privacy settings are right, and Data 61, who are part of CSIRO, who we're working with to develop the technical data sharing standards. So, also just to note that the framework itself is going to be established by legislation, but the ACCC has a role in really setting the detailed rules of the game we're calling them rules. Data 61 will be setting the technical standards, and the ACCC has a number of other roles. We're doing some consumer education, we'll be enforcing the regime, and we'll also be accrediting these trusted third parties and developing a register where they'll be listed and where the sort of technical side of the data sharing can occur through. So let's have a look at Jenny now and see if I can give you this worked example of how the CDR might play out. So this is Jenny. Jenny's got an everyday transaction account with Bank Average, who are average. She's charged a monthly account fee and fees for dishonoured transactions and an overdraft, and she's sort of keen to see if there's something better out there. So Jenny hops on her phone and does some research and finds out about New Era, who are a fintech, and they want to be able to use Jenny's CDR data to give her an individualised comparison of other options out there in the market. So after checking that New Era are accredited by the ACCC on our register, she downloads their app. Backwards. And on their app, she gives her free and informed consent to New Era to receive her banking transaction data, so all the things she's spent and all the money that's come into her account, to help her find a better account. And New Era is only allowed to use Jenny's data for the actual purposes she's consenting to, which is somewhat different than how a lot of businesses operate at the moment. Bank Average receives Jenny's authorization to share the data with New Era. New Era seeks the data from Bank Average via an API and a sort of comparison here to understand what an API is I've heard it described as the Google Maps one that allows the information in Google Maps to be sort of sucked out and used by other applications. Bank average then goes back to this ACCC register, checks that New Era is an organisation that it's allowed to share data with, and then pretty much instantaneously Jenny's transaction data is shared with New Era. And at any time Jenny can, either with New Era or with her bank app, log on to a consumer dashboard and just really check what's going on and who she's actually consented to share data with. So she's given New Era her transaction data, and New Era go away, they analyse this and conclude that she doesn't overdraw much on her account, but she does tend to have a history of dishonours. So they recommend a different transaction account with Bank Better to Jenny. And this one has some lower overdraft fees and no monthly fees and no dishonour fees. And Jenny decides she might switch to Bank Better. Okay, so yeah, Jenny's a bit of a hypothetical, but the CDR is intended to give a remedy for consumers to at least begin to start unlocking some of the value in their own consumer data and hopefully become a bit more engaged in some of these complex markets. The hope is this is going to lead to better functioning in these markets and to new innovations in services and products, which, to be quite honest, I probably can't envisage at the moment. And maybe to more switching between suppliers. So I'll just leave you there with some contact details if you'd like to know more, either about our work or just if you want to contact us for any reason. And I look forward to any questions you have later.
Hi, my name is Marco. I'm TA here, Monash Business Faculty of Business and Economics. Probably gonna deviate a little bit from what everyone talk about. Mine is a more futuristic approach. So my talk will walk around the question, what if we actually get paid for our personal data? So last year, with a former student of Monash, which is actually sitting there right now, we participated to the Swift Challenge. We've been asked the question, how can we protect personal data in an open API environment? So we went to Sydney, we came up with an idea. All the other teams came up with the idea of addressing the question with a new technology. It was artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain. We did the same with a twist. We decided that what if we pay users for their personal data? What kind of advantages this can bring to the economy in general? So we eventually won the award and we brought home $30,000. That's not bad. And we're still working on the idea now, and we did some research on it. So there's a huge literature about personal data, what can be done. And we found three main advantages of paying users for their personal data. First of all, it represents a supplement of earnings, especially nowadays where around the world inequality is rising, especially in developed countries like the United States, somewhere in Europe. Giving the chance to sell your personal data will help, probably will help, especially low-level income families and people. Another advantage could be represented by a redistribution of wealth. I'll give you some numbers here. Facebook in 2016 paid 1% of its value each year to labor for workers, while Walmart, that is the famous supermarket chain, paid 40% of its value in 2016 for labor to its workers. So there's a huge discrepancy there. You see how tech companies rely a lot on free data and don't pay that much in share of labor. Another advantage is Simon and everyone talk about it, is privacy and control. If we pay users for their data, we give them control over their personal data. And with control comes more control over the privacy. We thought with Aaron, maybe this is the same approach, that if you give money to a broker or to a bank to invest, you want to know what the broker is doing with your money, right? So that's the approach and the idea we had. So how things are working now is that you're giving away your data for free in exchange for free services. This is cool, this is amazing. You have free access to Google Apps, but this comes to a cost. So how Google Apps works is that they keep track of all your movements and to create traffic patterns, for example. Facebook is the other huge tech company that relies on free data. And why does Facebook allows you to use social platform for free? So you're sharing a lot of photos, pictures, you post, you like. So they use all of these informations. They use artificial intelligence and machine learning to process all of these and match you with products. That's what they do, right? Problem is the quality of the data that you produce is very, very low. When you post a picture, you don't always put the location of the picture or what you were doing there, what you were wearing, whatever kind of information can relate it to the picture. So Facebook came up with the idea, especially at the beginning, I don't know if you guys remember at the beginning, Facebook was really a basic interface, to introduce likes and emojis. So this wasn't just to allow you to have fun on pictures, there's also because they need to get more information. What people think about those pictures, or what people think about that particular topic. So the reason why you're producing low quality data is because there's no incentive. What is the incentive for you to tag and put a detailed description of the picture or write down a long comment over a post that you liked? There's no reason, because you don't get paid for it. So we came up with the idea of paying for personal data, paying for what you're doing. So in this kind of viewing, you become a data producer. With the right set of incentive, you're pushed to produce better data. I've been asked the question, why would I give up then on free services? Well, it's the same principle that applied during the Middle Age. The Lord was giving away lands for free in exchange for 70% of the crop and protection. So a farmer was protected, he needed just to work 16 hours a day and kept 20% of the crop at the end of the year. This is the same thing that is happening now. You're getting free services in exchange for everything you are and everything you do. So how can we change these? The main approach was, for our idea, because we're still working on it, we wanted to come up with something that actually worked. And we found out through our research that we need two things. First of all, we need to be able to reproduce the social aspect of the platform. The reason why Google is so successful and Facebook is so successful is the network effect. Why don't you leave Facebook? Well, because all your friends, family are there. So it's really hard. Like if I leave Facebook for a social network, there's no one, it's really hard for me. So we want to recreate the social aspect to allow network effect to expand in a way where, in a place where you can actually get remunerated for your personal data with the right set of incentives. The second aspect is we need more regulation. So I know that you guys mentioned regulation here. We personally believe that the approach that Europe used with the GDPR, where you have the chance to send an email and actually ask every single company to delete all the data they have on you, is the first important step. It's just a small step, there's still a lot of things to do, but it's an important step. So with more regulation, we're able to break up the monopoly. So the power of Google and Facebook is that just then. To give you some numbers, 64% of the internet searches went through Google in 2016, and Facebook had 1.5 billion users active for at least 50 minutes a day in 2016. Those are their numbers. huge. So you can't compete with that unless you bring out the guns, regulation, break up the monopoly, that's how it's called, it's the monopoly of the tech industry. And you allow more competitive and different approach to break in. I want to conclude say that the more we're moving towards the digital economy, the more who you are, what you do, what kind of sport, your activity, your heart rate, how you spend your money, how you spend your free time becomes you. And whatever you do, it takes time. And as you are getting paid when you work, because you're using your time, as you should get paid for your digital identity.